This is going to be a little bit of a different one because I'm going to try and tell a story, which I don't think I've done so far. I posted about this on my close friend story, so if you're one of those people, then you will have seen it. But yesterday night, my backpack and laptop were stolen from a train that I left without carrying my backpack because I forgot it on the train. I was helping someone else with their luggage and totally forgot to figure out where my own stuff was. And by the time I had contacted the train station and had the staff kindly went and searched the train, it was gone. Someone had taken it. And what had happened is I had contacted Cambridge, which is where I was, and they had called ahead to King's Lynn, which was the place that the the final stop on the route. And it was gone by the time they had searched the train. Someone had taken the backpack, and it was in a place that you could not have mistakenly taken it from. It was in one of the overhead compartments. It's more likely that you would forget something than actually take it. And I realized that I am more emotionally attached to that laptop than I realized because it meant a lot to me, that laptop. It's a laptop that I saved up for almost 2 years, and I remember following the leaks and rumors around the M1. And if for context, Apple didn't make their own chips. And what that meant was they would have to go to a chip manufacturer in order to get the microchip that runs the entire computer. The chip is the brain of the machine. And for many, many years, they had an exclusive deal with a company called Intel, who used to make really, really great chips. But then in recent years, in the 2010s, effectively started becoming really bad at making chips. What they would do is they would announce these incredible great chips that would have certain thermal capacities, so how much heat would be produced and how much performance you could get at certain temperatures. And then they would never hit those promises. And so what Apple was doing is they were designing these beautiful MacBooks, and they were hoping that Intel were going to hold up their end of the bargain, make these chips that could run in really thin laptops. And ultimately, every single time Apple were promised a certain quality of chip with certain specifications, Intel would fail to deliver, and they would make chips that were worse than Apple was expecting. They wouldn't be able to handle the thermal capacity of the laptop that was designed. So the laptops were too thin and too hot for the chip. And what that meant was that Apple had this chronic reputation for making for making laptops where the chip was too hot and the fans would like go whirring. I don't know if you ever saw those memes that was like me opening two Google Chrome tabs on my laptop or on my MacBook, and it's like turbine jet engines and stuff. And the reason for that was because Intel ultimately were not holding their end of the bargain up in terms of making really efficient chips. And the irony was that iPhones were made in in in-house. The iPhone chips were made by Apple themselves, and they were perfect. They were really, really energy efficient. They were really fast. Everyone was really happy with them, and most importantly, they didn't overheat with just one app open. So anyway, I remember having one of these laptops, these 2016 laptops, and it worked, but it really just trudged along, and it had all these complications and problems. And I remember following all the leaks and rumors for this new MacBook with a Apple made chip inside of it, and no one knew what the specifications were, but the leaks and rumors were insane, and they were genuinely industry changing. And I remember during the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic, and in 2019, really talking everyone's ear off about this. The Apple chips in laptops and MacBooks, they're going to change the entire world, and they're going to change the entire industry because they can take this incredible chip that they've made for the iPhone and they can put it in a MacBook. And I remember my MacBook being completely on its last legs and truly just struggling through the most basic stuff. And this was in the early days of Onsen Progress. Onsen Progress was kind of just an idea at this point, and I was just trying to finish university. And I remember just holding out and holding out and just really trying to push my laptop to continue going and hitting the workloads that I needed it to hit in terms of editing and the rest of it, because I just really had faith that this MacBook was going to be the perfect MacBook with this new Apple chip in it. And everyone was really worried about how the transition was going to go, and all of the leaks and rumors seemed completely unbelievable. How could you make a MacBook that could have desktop class power with great battery life and no thermal performance? It was sort of unheard of. And then they announced it. And I remember talking to people who were PC people and showing them the graphs and the stats and everything. And there was all this controversy about how Apple are terrible with their graphs, and that is true. But anyway, all of that to say, it was this laptop that for me was so hyped up. It was so much the perfect laptop. It was the one that I was so excited to get. And I remember saving up for almost 2 years to get the laptop because I was just so excited to be able to use what was the platonic ideal of a MacBook Pro, I guess. This is super nerdy, and I'm super excited to talk about it because when else am I going to talk about it? But they came out with this M1 MacBook, and then they came out, and I was like, do I buy the M1 MacBook in the old design, which was the first one they came out with, and the leaks were incredible. They were the tests of that first MacBook were incredible, but I knew that there were rumors that there were going to be a professional version, an M1 Pro, not just the Apple M1, and an M1 Max, and even better. The leaks always said that they were the M1 Ultra, but it ended up being called the M1 Max. And I thought, no, I'm going to wait, and had to wait an excruciating 1 more year because I knew I could get the M1, the one that everyone was talking about and hyping up, and it seemed like the perfect laptop. And there was all this excruciating time period where I wasn't able to buy the MacBook because even though they had released a Apple made, Apple designed chip, it wasn't the one that was for the pros, and that was going to be another year. And I remember that year was like pulling teeth because it was a game of chicken of me having to stay disciplined, of just like, I have to just use this completely dying MacBook to try and edit all the videos for the early days of Art in Progress. And it was just the most frustrating thing, crashes and the keyboard giving out on me and all this other stuff. And then I remember they released the M1 Max, and look, I'm an Apple fanboy, or I was more so, and I ended up just buying the MacBook. I bought the M1 MacBook Pro Max. I was like, give me the best thing. I've been waiting for so long, and I've been struggling through this laptop that has been on its last legs for multiple years, and it got to the point where I couldn't use the laptop without on my lap because it was too warm. And so this new one came, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It felt like a complete paradigm shift for what I could do, and I just felt like all of these things I was doing on my old laptop, I just didn't have to do anymore because yeah, I just didn't have to do anymore because I didn't have to manage. Oh, do I have Photoshop open? Okay, I'm gonna have to close Premiere Pro because I can't have Photoshop and Premiere Pro open at the same time. It was just I could have 1,000 tabs open. I could do whatever I want. It was just a complete creative enabler because nothing was stopping me from being in my flow state. I could open as many tabs as I wanted, research whatever I wanted, have everything open, and just close the lid, and it would just always stay cool. The fans would never spin, and it was a perfect laptop. And I built my entire career on that. It was a laptop that I would tell everyone is going to change the industry, and then it ultimately did. It did change the industry. I won't get into it because I could talk about this for hours, but from a architectural chip architecture perspective, it also changed the industry. But it also changed the industry creatively. I think that these M1 chips, they truly enabled a lower cost, high end creative workhorse. And while it changed the industry, it also changed my life. I built the whole Advance and Progress effectively on the M1 Mac. And also, even if it wasn't the M1 Mac that I built it on, I built it somewhat on the hope that the M1 Mac would be the laptop I'd build it on, because I was trudging along with this terrible MacBook, not knowing if I was going to have to switch to PC or wait for this promised MacBook Pro that was going to be perfect. And then it ultimately was. And I was there when I had to grind out late nights or take it on flights and edit on a flight, because it was incredibly battery efficient, and you could do that. You could edit anywhere and it would be perfect. And whether or not you plugged it in or you didn't plug it in, either way, it would be an incredible tool to just be in your flow state. Nothing about the MacBook's technical limitations would get in your way. You could throw anything at it. And yeah, I think when I posted it on my close friend stories, I posted it with a photo of me taking a photo of the laptop when we just hit 1 million subscribers, just before we hit 1 million subscribers. And that was an instrumental moment. And I sort of owe that laptop that 1 million subscribers in a lot of ways, because that is the tool that enabled that entire career from happening. Uh, and and yeah, so I just felt a lot more emotionally attached to that laptop than I expected. And I every day when I used it, I just it felt like a brand new laptop. And it's almost 5 years old now. And it's almost 5 years old, and it felt like a brand new laptop every single day I used it. The problem for Apple is that, when would I ever need to buy another laptop? This was the laptop. I felt like it to this day, there's nothing I've thrown at it that felt like it was slowing it down whatsoever. And I started to learn After Effects on it, and I did a bunch of complicated edits on it, and yeah, nothing seemed to phase it. And it was light, and it was compact, and it was built like a tank, and it was just exactly what you needed. And they brought back all the ports. You had a HDMI port again, and it was just great. An SD card reader. They just perfected everything about what a laptop could be. And yeah, so I was really, really sad to have lost it, and to have had it stolen. And ultimately, I called the station manager at Cambridge, and they called up to King's Lynn in order to see if they could search the train and find the backpack. But it was gone. It was gone. Someone had taken it. And I actually got on the next train as soon as the train left Cambridge. I actually got on the next train up to King's Lynn, because I thought, well, I'll just catch it 20 minutes after the train with the backpack arrives, because I'll just be on the next one up. And I did get up there, and 20 minutes before I got up there, I got a call from the station manager at Cambridge, and who said, "I'm really sorry, it's bad news. They searched the train, and there's no there's no backpack." So, you know, that's sort of where I thought the story ended. But that is not where the story ended. Because when I was on the phone with the station manager, I said, "That's funny, because I just got a Find My Friends ping for my laptop and my backpack at Kings Lynn Station. It's at the taxi rank right now. Someone has taken the laptop, and they had taken it to where the taxis are, and I guess they were going to go get in a taxi or in the car park." And they said, "Oh, okay, well, maybe they're gonna hand it in, but we can't really search for it. What does it look like?" And it was just a nondescript black backpack. And yeah, they said, "We looked around, but there's no one really here anymore." It's a very small station. So I get there 20 minutes later, and yeah, it's offline. The laptop's offline. It's not a live tracker. And I can see, 20 minutes ago, this laptop was at this station, but ultimately it was gone. And maybe someone had turned it off, or whatever. But it was just there. It was just right there, like in my fingers, and it slipped away. And so at that point, I knew someone had stolen the laptop and the backpack, and I had no choice but to basically just take the train back. It ended in Kings Lynn, so I had about 10 minutes to make a decision on whether or not I just got back on the train, or I just stayed in Kings Lynn for another hour while I waited for the next train to come. And ultimately, I decided I have no more leads. The laptop is dead in terms of its tracking, and I just thought, it's okay. I can just go home. The backpack actually did not ping at all. The backpack looked like it was still in Cambridge, where I got off. But I know that that wasn't the case because I got off, and the backpack didn't because the backpack had the laptop in it, and the laptop ended up in Kings Lynn. So I just decided to go back home, and I made that post, the sad post about the laptop being gone, and I thought that was the end of the story. And there was more. When I got back to Cambridge at the end of the night yesterday, I ended up with another ping. Very interesting. Games afoot. So when I got to Cambridge, I got another ping in Kings Lynn. And the problem with that, I got back to Cambridge and I basically got this ping, and I was like, I looked at it, and it was in a kind of sketchy area in Kings Lynn. Now, I don't know anything about Kings Lynn. Maybe Kings Lynn isn't all that sketchy, but I looked at this area, and I looked it up on Google Maps, and it was a caravan park or a trailer park for Americans. And it kind of looked sketchy. It looked pretty downtrodden, and I don't know, it just looks a bit rough around the edges, let's say. And so did make me nervous. But anyway, I just thought, look, it's not worth all the hassle, and I don't know exactly where it is. If it was a single building, I could probably go there, but and I don't know, talk to them maybe. But I thought in a caravan park, I don't know. That just seems maybe a little bit more dangerous, a bit more sketchy, whatever. But in the delusion of me, I thought, hey, I'm a friendly guy. I could probably talk them round. So in the morning today, this is when I had a day that was sort of directed by the Safdie brothers for 1,000 reasons. It was like Uncut Gems or Marty Supreme, where I just had like a billion things happening all day because I had a bunch of personal health stuff that I needed to deal with in the hospital in the morning, and then afterwards, I I basically I decided I was going to drive up to Kings Lynn and just go to the caravan park and locate where the laptop is, because I actually got a live signal, like a ping every 20 minutes, telling me where the laptop was, and I thought I'd just drive up there and I'll just be like, hey, look, I've lost my laptop. It's my backpack, and I was going to say I was a videographer. I had some client footage on it, and ultimately, like, I'd get in trouble with my job if I couldn't figure it out, or find it. And I'm just here to try and figure out where my laptop went. If you found it, then like I would love to be able to get that back, and I'd love to be able to offer a finder's fee as well. So if you see it, even if you don't know where it is or you've never heard of it, that's totally fine. But if it turns up, just let me know. I'm going to be in the area for a couple of hours just searching around. And if something comes up, I'd love to give you a finder's fee. Otherwise, I'm going to head back to Cambridge. And that was my plan. I was going to I rehearsed this sort of little spiel. And I thought I'd go up there and I'd give the spiel, and I'll say, hey, listen, there's a finder's fee, like 100, £200. Obviously, this laptop was quite expensive when I bought it. I have since learned that the price of these laptops have depreciated, so it's not that expensive anymore. But I thought, I could give a pretty hefty finder's fee, maybe £50, maybe £100 or something. Anyway, so that was the plan, and I took some cash, and I got in a car, and I called my friend and said, "Yo, do you wanna go on a little adventure?" So we started driving up there, and here's the complication: I've had the morning that's been cut from. I've had a chunk of the morning that's been cut in terms of the personal health stuff that I needed to deal with in the mornings, in the morning, and then I had this time limitation later in the day that I had an extremely important, non-movable meeting or podcast recording type thing, where I had to have like an interview basically. And that was at 3 p.m. And I needed to be back in London for that. So I was like, right, I need to be back in London for 3 p.m. I need to try and get up to Kings Lynn. It's like an hour and a half away. Negotiate with whoever it is, try and secure this laptop, and then come back. And coming back is about 2.5 hours. So I was working all this out, and I just realized while I was driving up to Kings Lynn, There's no way. The timing just doesn't work out. And I just thought, what's more important? When I was thinking about it, I was thinking about turning pro and and just like what the most pragmatic thing was. I actually wasn't really thinking of turning pro. I just thought I'd throw that in there because I thought it would be poetic. But honestly, I actually didn't think about turning pro at all. What I was actually thinking about is just getting through the day. I was just super locked in on all of the moving pieces and all the moving demands on the day and all the tasks that I said that I needed to get done by the end of the day because it was a Friday and I wanted to maintain my goals. And also just because other people were relying on me that day. And I thought, okay, with all these moving pieces, I don't have enough time budgeted in order to go all the way up into this unknown environment. And I don't even know if by the time I get there, the laptop will be there. Maybe they will have sold it off to someone, or they'll go to a different town, or maybe they'll get back on a train and come all the way back down to London or Cambridge or whatever, or on a different train all the way up the country. I don't really know. And I thought this is a complete unknown scenario, and I don't have the time in order to negotiate all of these unknown factors. And so I just needed to reduce the variables. So actually, halfway there, we turned around and we went back to Cambridge because now I was really cut for time in order to try and get back in time to have this interview. And basically, I my plan was I needed a laptop that was operational in order to take this call on this nice mic for this project, um, this video. Anyway, so what did I do? I basically decided we're going to drive back. We're going to go straight into town. We're going to go to the Apple store. We're going to buy the cheapest MacBook they have on a credit card, and I guess I was just going to buy it on a yeah on my credit card. Then I was going to take that. I was going to bring it to London. I was going to do the interview, and then after that, I was going to return the laptop and then buy a used laptop off eBay. And that'll take a couple of days to arrive. But I needed that critical moment. So I sort of pieced that together while I was driving. And that made me, I'm not going to lie, a pretty inattentive driver. Thankfully, I didn't run any red lights or anything because my friend who's in the passenger seat was like, "That's a red light," and I was like, "Oh, I need to stop." So almost did, but I didn't. Anyway, all of that to say, we got to the Apple store and I said, "Hey, I need to buy the cheapest MacBook you have." And I was like, "Yeah, I basically had my laptop stolen and I just need to replace it." And while I am saying I need to replace my MacBook and I got my laptop stolen, I'm pointing at my Find My because I can see the last known location, which was a couple of hours ago, and then it pinged again. And while I'm standing in this Apple store, having already purchased, I've already paid for it, having already purchased the laptop, the the hang on, did I even start the recording? Yeah. So having purchased the laptop, it pinged again, and it pinged in a CEX. If you don't know what a CEX is, it's basically a used electronics store. So it pinged in the CEX in Kings Lynn. So effectively, this person has decided to try and sell my MacBook. So one thing you can do with MacBooks is you can type what a message and put it into locked mode, which basically means that no one can really tamper or interfere with the MacBook. Otherwise, it sort of like just nukes itself in order to make it completely useless to deter people from trying to sell it for parts even. And you can also put a message on the screen. So what I did was I put a message that just said, "Please do the right thing," and then my phone number, reward if found, hoping that someone would, in this chain of logistics, just call me and I can negotiate a reward. Because I guess I was now emotionally attached to this laptop. And while everything was backed up and everything was in the cloud, there was also just all of these complicated logistics around trying to replace this specific laptop that was really, really good for me. And I just didn't want to go through all of that. And I still felt like there was hope as long as the battery was still alive on that laptop. I could really specify where it was. And so I saw it pinged and I was like, oh, this guy's going to sell it. I'm hoping that the person he sells it to calls me and maybe I can buy it off them at a used price. I don't know. We decided to go back into the car with this new MacBook that I just bought. And when we were in the car and we were driving back to my back to the station to go home, I we got another ping, and this time it was at the train station, Kings Lynn. And I thought, maybe this guy has gone in this Kings Lynn is a tiny town. This guy's gone into the town, he's tried to sell it, and no one wants it. And maybe they've decided to get on a train to go to London, because that's where the train goes to. It goes Kings Lynn to London, and sell it in London. I don't know. I have no idea. So I thought, well, that train is going to go through Cambridge, and that's where we are right now. So my plan was basically to try and track this laptop and get on the same train, and then just walk down the train and try and talk to the guy. Be like, hey, man, that's my laptop. And that will be interesting. But, and again, like I feel like I'm pretty good at just keeping a calm demeanor and not escalating situations. So I was definitely not going to try and get into a fight or anything. But I thought, hey, man, I've been really trying to find this laptop. It seems like you've just found it. I'd love to pay a finder's fee and just, whatever. So that was kind of my plan. And obviously, if anything got weird, I would just walk away. But anyway, that was the plan. So then what happened was I am I'm looking at this laptop at Kings Lynn Station, and I'm thinking, okay, what train is it going to get? But I'm driving, so I can't really figure all of that out. But what I decide to do is I call the British Transport Police, which is sort of the police who are at railway stations when they are. So I call them and I say, hey, look, this is this situation. Anything you can do? Is there someone at Kings Lynn station that you can put me through to? And he says, I can't actually put you through to them, but I can call them myself. And so they call them, and turns out that whoever it was just walked into the station and they handed it into Lost Property and said, I must have taken it with a bunch of my other bags. And they had just handed it in, and they were just waiting for someone to claim it. So uh, luckily, I had this ping, and I immediately got on it, and ultimately got the bag, and or secured the location of the bag, which was in Kings Lynn. And then I decided, okay, what is the most what so out of all of these pieces, once I had a ping, I then had to cancel my 3 p.m. interview, because while I was trying to make my 3 p.m. interview, because there was a huge question mark on whether or not I could actually secure my laptop. Now that the laptop was confirmed secured, I felt like that was an extremely solid probability event. I decided the other stuff could be moved, because the probability that someone would not be able to reschedule is high, but not astronomically high. And that was a probability that I was able to take, rather than the haze of probabilities that I had if I was walking into an unknown situation in Kings Lynn. So, what I decided to do was I decided to cancel that interview recording. And then I decided to for the third time, go up to Kings Lynn to try and claim my laptop with all my stuff in it in my backpack. So we go up there, and by we, I mean just me. And again, there are all of these other moving pieces, in the sense that I am cutting into valuable productive hours of my day, and I have these goals for myself when it comes to trying to achieve things every week. So ultimately, I'm like I get on this train and I know I'm going to get my laptop, but I'm also trying to work on the train on my little phone. And then I took a bunch of meetings on my phone. It was weird. I like sort of sat in a quiet-ish carriage and just tried to figure out a way to take all these meetings and organize things and reschedule things and all this stuff. Hey, look, there's a lot you can do with an internet connection and a smartphone, but not everything. Sometimes you need your M1 Max that you bought after saving up for 2 years and following Mac rumors for multiple years, and learning all about ASML and TSMC and the entire tech stack and x84 and ARM chips and all this other stuff, and going through all the leaks and figuring out strategically how to save and which laptop to buy and which one's going to come and the speculation, all this other stuff. And sometimes you need that laptop. Sometimes that's the thing that you need in order to do all of your work. So I got to King's Lynn and I grabbed my laptop. And again, the way this train works is it gets up there, everyone clears out the train, and you have 5 minutes in order to get back on the train and go all the way back. And you can go to King's Cross. So then what happened was I had to find the guy, find the guy who had the backpack, and I had 5 minutes. I was rushing around the station, asking people. And the other thing about that is that I had this piece of paper that said I've lost an item and I have a free ticket basically to go up and down this one line to try and find it. So I was running around and I had to ask a guy to let me out of the station so I could go to the lost property, and I was trying to get him to give it to me, and he gave it to me and all this other stuff. And then I had to look through the bag to check that everything was there and someone hadn't put something in there that was like, I don't know, something incriminating or whatever. I didn't want to be implicated in something wider, basically. And I had to clear all of that. My backpack did absolutely stink of cigarette smoke, but at least I have my laptop back, which was amazing. And then I decided I had to run back to the train. I had to sit on the train, and then again I had to take all these meetings and do this stuff and move all the stuff around and all this complication around this interview that I was missing, and really just try and save as much of the day as possible when it came to my work life, and also just be extremely appreciative of all of the people who had helped me along this journey, from the station master to my friend who decided to just pull up and go into a crazy wild goose chase across the entirety of England trying to find this laptop. And the other piece to all of this is the reason I wanted to be in London for this interview was because after the interview, I had planned a 23-person dinner in London. And I had put it in the books, and it was something that I'd planned for months. Maybe I'd started planning it in November for January. And I knew that I did not want to miss it. And I thought I would because of all of this complication, because it was really getting down to the wire. And I'm completely beraggled because I've been up since 7, maybe 6:30, like looking at the MacBook on Find My and figuring out what my plan is for the day and all this other stuff. I also in the early hours of the morning, also purchased a used MacBook to arrive, so I also have to cancel that still. So all of that happened, and I thought, okay, I might be able to salvage this whole day because I can work in all these various trains that I'm on and piece together some semblance of a workday. And then, after piecing together some semblance of a workday, I got off the train completely just looked rough, felt completely exhausted. And here's the other part about it: because I had to start so early because of the personal health stuff in the morning, I hadn't eaten anything all day, like genuinely nothing. I had scrambled eggs in the morning and then nothing. And so by the end of the day, my throat was parched from literally physically running around, but then also just from truly the insanity of the day. And I was dizzy and I was totally wiped, but I had this dinner that I had booked and planned, and it was a whole thing, it was a whole production. And I got to I got to my I got to King's Cross, and I got there at about 5 p.m. and the dinner was at 6. And I calculated it. It was pretty tight, but I thought if I was really quick, I could go home, I could shower, I could change into something nice. This is something nice. Hello. Um, and then I could just leg it as fast as I could and get to this dinner. And the dinner started at 6, and I walked into the restaurant at 6 exactly. And I was there, and no one else was there because all of my friends are late people, and I love that. I love that for us. I always tell them, I always tell them 15 minutes before and then book the place for 15 minutes afterwards. But I decided to arrive at 6 because that's what I told people. So I arrive, and thankfully no one was there. No one was waiting, but I was there and I walked into the restaurant at exactly 6 p.m. And that was the absolute bow on this insanity of a day where I tried to salvage the entire day with all these moving pieces and try to have a continual optimistic, probabilistic view on this entire situation, where I tried to map out multiple outcomes and continue to juggle what could and couldn't happen and do it all in my head. And then we had a fantastic dinner. It was 23 people, low key. I knew that about two, low key, basically, you kind of know that like two or three people are probably not going to show up. Then, a couple others are probably also not going to show up. But ultimately, we had about 18 to 19 people there, and it was wonderful. We had Greek food, it was halal, it hit everyone's dietary requirements, which it was complicated, I will tell you. And also was just a fantastic end to this crazy day. Not only that, it was an incredible beginning to the new year. This was our big gathering after everyone's travels in the new year, and I just had a fantastic night, and it was a lovely, lovely, lovely end to what was genuinely an absolute roller coaster of a day. Thank you for listening.